Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today we are talking with a legend in his own right, Jeff Woolwine, UFO investigator and the owner of the Phoenix Lights Petroglyphs in the Sky YouTube channel and author of the Phoenix Light Petroglyphs in the Sky book. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us on the show. He's going to be audio only tonight, but he's got a lot to share. And as we get ready to go, make sure that you strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. All right. Right off the bat, want to thank Styx for joining us in the chat. We're here. We're ready. Anybody else in the chat, thank you for joining us this evening. I want to introduce today's guest. He's an Arizona native. He's grown up in
There's
Phoenix
not many
area.
of us here.
What's that?
So there's not many of us.
Not many Phoenix natives. No, that's true. And he's joining us via telephone. Jeff, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking some time to explain your knowledge regarding the UFO phenomena in this area.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I wanted just kind of off the top of the show. We got some news yesterday regarding Congress finally admitting that there are UFOs and that they don't even think that they are man-made aerial phenomena. They think they have some other origin. You've been studying UFOs for a long time. Is this news to you?
Well, they're getting closer. But in my mind, I mean, everyone is, waiting for this disclosure and waiting for the government to actually come clean on what they know about these things. But you really have to look at the history of these things. And yes, these things do have a history. This is nothing new. These things has always been with us, in my mind, in my research, since the beginning of time. This is not anything that, in my opinion, and probably a lot of people who understand this phenomenon, opinion is that they will never come clean on what's really here. Of course they know what's here. Of course they've been watching these things for many, many, many years. But will they actually tell the public? Well, I don't think they will. I think it's in their mind to keep the public at bay, and just so, because there's so many things going on. I mean, obviously, more and more is showing up in our skies. So the talk of balloons and flares isn't cutting it anymore. So now they get out and say, okay, well, you know what, you guys, there is something here, but we don't know exactly what it is yet. And it's a good thing. I mean, it's kind of cool that they're saying that it's not man-made, which is good. But it's not created or made in the way that everybody expects that can understand what's really here. Lots of information. I've been doing this for many, many years. I started off investigating the Phoenix Lights, and
so let's start there.
Sure.
So you were in Phoenix at the time of the Phoenix Lights. I was in Phoenix, Kyle too. I remember when they showed up on the news. I think I even recall climbing up on my roof to see if I could see them. And I was probably 14 years old when they came to town. Tell me about your experience. Did you witness the Phoenix Lights, and what was that like? What did you see that night?
I am actually, when it comes to this, March 13th, 1997, alleged craft going over the city of Phoenix, we really have to look at the facts here. We have to talk about what we know is true. And so let's look at it. What do we know is true? We know that lights were seen on the west side of South Mountain in Phoenix, Arizona, the very far west of Phoenix, very far west of South Mountain, right there at the edge. How do we know this? We know this because of how many videos? 4 videos of different people around the valley filming lights on the far side of South Mountain. Now, why do we have these videos? Well, one of the reasons is because there was a sky watcher out there. His name is Tom King, who was watching these lights weeks and nights before March 13th, 1997. And so he was waiting for it. He was waiting for something to happen because he filmed something earlier that night, and he's been filming the whole week. So he was ready for something. And lo and behold, he was in a very good position when the sighting occurred. He was right there. So that's one of the videographers that filmed these things on the east side or the west side of South Mountain. Now, are they going over the city? No. Why is this? Why don't we have video of something going over the city of Phoenix? Now, this is interesting because apparently, like I said before, we've got sky watchers waiting for something to happen. So if anything, reported a mile-long V-shaped craft going 8 miles an hour over the city of Phoenix, but not one photograph or video. I'm sorry. I'm all about what we can prove and what we can actually talk about. To be honest with you, in my 20 years plus research of the Phoenix lights, I have not came across one iota of evidence suggesting that anything flew over the city that night. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've seriously looked into this. And like I said before, the only videos we have is the videos of these lights on the far west side of Phoenix. So, and the sky watchers, the sky watchers were ready for this. So if anything was going to fly over the city, then boom, they would have got it on film. So that's not the case. In my opinion, this probably will turn some people's heads a little bit, but it's just like being back in grade school. Tommy, he skinned his knee. He's at the nurse's office. Well, by the time it goes around the whole school, Tommy's in the hospital. He's losing his leg, and he's getting ready to die. That's how stories kind of blow up way out of proportion. In my opinion, in studying this and being probably the only one to actually look into this and not just taking the word of hearsay, I think it's got proportion. I think there's a lot of people here, when you look at it, they have a news camera in front of them and they're going to say anything on TV. We have people trying to sell books and movie tickets at Harkins Theater, all of the base of hearsay. We cannot, in my opinion, go off of hearsay. In order to understand what's going on, we must look at facts. We must understand the truth. Hearsay is like everyone. Everyone's got a story to tell, but we must go with what the facts suggest, what the facts say. The facts say there is no evidence of anything flying over the city that night. The evidence are these lights, and that's what we're here to talk about. What are these lights? What's the history of these lights? These lights appeared on the the west side of South Mountain. And this isn't anything new. These lights have been visiting this mountain for thousands of years. This is nothing new. When you ask Earth about these lights, Earth will tell you, "Oh, those things they're always here."
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Asking Earth, what does that mean?
If you ask the planet about these lights, the planet's going to say, "Look, these things have been here way before you have." These things have been here before man has walked the earth.
Okay, so how do you do that? How do you ask the earth about the lights?
You go back and you understand the history. And how do you understand the history? Well, first of all, let's look at the landscape here. Let's look at the city of Phoenix. So we have all these mountains around the Valley of the Sun.
Yeah.
On these mountains are petroglyphs, an Indian name for rock carvings, rock art. And they are telling a story. They didn't have video cameras back then. They didn't have cameras. They had stone boulders to record what they saw and for things to be remembered. It's not just a story or a legend. They did this for a reason. It's not just graffiti out there. They're telling a story about what was going on in their time. The Hohokam Indians were the first Native Americans to settle here in the Valley of the Sun. Evidence would suggest that a lot of them came from Mexico. Back then, as you know, as all of us, when we look at the history, we know that Arizona was a part of Mexico at that time, at least 1,000 years ago. And so it's only obvious, yes, the Mayans and the Hohokams were here in this valley at the same time. How do we know this? We know this because of the petroglyphs. There's different kinds of art out there. One is Hohokam, and one is Mayans. And how did they get here? Well, in my opinion, they followed these lights. They traveled out of Mexico, and they arrived here in the Valley of the Sun. They followed these lights. They followed these things to South Mountain. And South Mountain is the key, is the heart of what's going on in the Phoenix skies. South Mountain, that's the source, and we'll get into that here in a minute.
Okay.
And so they followed the lights. They followed them all the way to this mountain. From there, they set up camp. They were the masters of canal systems back then. And they flowed the water through the Colorado River. Matter of fact, today's grid, the canal systems, we pretty much use the same type of Hohokams canal systems as today as the Hohokams did back then. We're pretty much using the same canals as they dug back then.
Yep, that's true.
Mm-hmm. And so when we look at Mexico, we see the pyramids, we see the Aztec pyramids, and we see the Mayan pyramids, and we know there's sacrifice going on. Everything that was going on over there in Mexico was happening here in the Valley of the Sun. South Mountain was known as a different name. South Mountain was known as Mount Sapoa, Mountain of Mercy. And so the Hohokams, they were here for 1,000 years. And the story goes, when they first arrived here, they didn't know how to live. So these beings came up out of the sand world, came down from the sky, and they taught these people how to live, how to survive. In return, the people at the time, the Hohokams, they worshiped these things as gods. They performed sacrifice or make rocks on the solstice. Everything that we read in Mexico was going on here. How do we know this? Because of the petroglyphs. The petroglyphs are prehistoric photographs of what was going on here. Also, we could find the altars. There are sacrificing altars on South Mountain.
There's altars on South Mountain?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I found at least 3 of them, all oriented towards the east. And we all know that the east is sacred for the morning sunrise. So it's oriented east is very sacred. Oh, that and the sunsets also, but we'll get into that later.
So before we move on from the altars, how do you know what they were used for? And if you do, how do you know that?
Well, I was Before I became a ufologist, I always loved history. Always loved archaeology. So
Sure.
I was an amateur archaeologist at least 10 years before I started being a sky watcher. So I was, always studying up on archaeology. I was always out, investigating things for myself, understanding what's man-made, what's not man-made. So going out there on South Mountain, I'm seeing a lot of stuff. In my book, I have photographs of everything that I'm talking about in my book. I was finding stuff that the city archaeologist was not talking about. And it was kind of bothering me because not only am I finding these altars, I'm finding man-made pyramid hills. I'm finding tombs on South Mountain in some of these pyramid hills. And I'm finding petroglyphs of giants. And I'm finding evidence of giants, of big, massive stones, huge stone boulders being chipped away, picked up, and placed. There's a wall on South Mountain it's overlooking the city. It's right off of Central Avenue there. When you drive up into South Mountain, you're on Central heading towards the mountain. And once you get there, you can look up to the left, and you can see some major devastation. They blew up this huge wall that was constructed, in my opinion, by somebody very big. I mean, it had to have been a giant because these boulders were huge and weigh a few hundred tons. I mean, it was just a huge wall. And most of it, from the back side of it, the stuff that they didn't blow up, is still there. And you can see how the wall was there and huge masses of dirt was placed on top of it. But I'm getting way ahead of myself.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting you bring up giants because we did have a guest on several months ago, Hugh Newman, who is a contributor to the program Ancient Aliens. And he also studies giants. And he says that in the American Southwest, that some of the biggest giants in the world existed at a certain point. And he actually looks for them and studies them. So it's so interesting that you bring that up.
Well, there's evidence. I found proof positive of evidence of not only the petroglyphs of the story talking about the giants here on the mountains, but also, the stone boulders that have been picked up and placed, and some of them are teeter-tottering on a corner, right, to orient the equinox and the solstice shadow marker effects. I talked about that in my book also. There's so much to cover. So let's start up at the beginning. So the Holocoms were here in Phoenix, and they lived here for 1,000 years. They saw these things in the sky. They performed sacrifice unto these things. These things taught them how to survive. This went on for 1,000 years until one day they simply vanished. Okay, there's no trace of them. As a matter of fact, Holocom is a Pima name for the people who are gone, the people who got taken away. The Pimas considered themselves ancestors to the Holocom. Also, the Tohono O'odham tribe, they consider themselves part of the Holocom era also. And so the archaeologist wants us to believe, well, the Holocom people was a simple, peace-loving race of people who were masters of the canal systems, and one day they simply left because of drought. Well, if that's the case, where did they go? There's no evidence on where they went. But yet the petroglyphs, and when you talk to some of the elder tribes around, and who actually will talk about this, will tell you a different story. The petroglyphs and the oral tradition, the real oral tradition, says that these people were taken away by the Phoenix Lights. They were taken away by these things that we see in the skies, now known as called as UFOs. They were carried away up into the sky. And so when this was going on, it was a terrifying event. And the reason why this occurred is because for some reason, and I'm still looking into the reason on this, the sacrificing had stopped. So when we look at the landscape of Phoenix, we can see evidence of weathering high up on the mountains. So it wasn't a dried up desert as it is now. It was a tropical-like landscape. We see evidence of waterfalls coming down the mountain. It was not a desert at that time. When the whole country was here, it was a tropical-like type of forest, and things were all green and Haiti, and it was great until the sacrificing stopped. Now, when the sacrificing stopped, that's when things started to dry up. That's when things started to die. And the tribal people were screaming at their elders, "Why did you stop the sacrifice? Look, the gods are angry with us. Why did you do this? The food has stopped. There's no rain. There's no water. Everything is drying up. Why did you stop the sacrifice?" And this went on for months. It was just drying up. The place was dying. And then some say the devil came from the east and took these people away. The petroglyphs, the rock carvings out there, the prehistoric photographs show these orbs in the sky, show these other things in the sky, coming down and picking these people up by their heads and taking them up into the sky. Now, the oral tradition continues, and it says there were people that were witnessing this, and they were afraid, and they hid in caves. And when it was all over with, the people who survived came out and was screaming at their elders, "Why did you do this? Look what happened." And the leaders, the tribal leaders, they knew that it was wrong to stop the sacrifice. So they cut out their own hearts on the sacrificing tables. The rest of the people, the rest of the natives, knew that it was wrong to live in this valley. They cursed this valley, saying, "Whoever lived in this valley is going to have to go back to war with these spirits of the earth and sky." And they were terrified. And so they buried the gold. They buried the gold in South Mountain, and they vowed never to come back into this valley ever again. They went back to Mexico. Now, where did I get this story from? So for a whole year, right, I'm finding things out there on the mountain. I'm watching these things come and go from South Mountain. I'm climbing the mountain. I'm investigating the petroglyphs. I even found a Native American tour guide who works at the Pueblo Indian Art Museum. I saw him on television talking about the petroglyphs on South Mountain. And he was saying that they were recording things that their ancestors was involved with to record things. And one of the persons that was with them says, "Now this stick figure man looks like he's looking up at something above his head." And Dave Morris, his name is Dave Morris, and you can find him at the Pueblo Indian Art Museum in Phoenix, Arizona. He turned around and says, "Yes, exactly. It is part of the interpretation out here is that these petroglyphs are telling a story, is recording significant events in history." And it just so happens that this stick figure guy is looking up at an orb above his head. Now I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. All right, this is in 2004. Okay, when I was watching this, when I was doing all my investigation, this was in 2004. And so in 1997, we had the Phoenix Lights, 1997. So all these other sky watchers out here never looked into the petroglyphs, never looked into the history of Phoenix. And all of a sudden, the petroglyphs are talking to me. They're saying, well, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, we have strange lights in the sky. Now we have strange markings on the rocks out here. There has to be a connection. I called up Dave, and I was like, "Dude, I saw you on television talking about the petroglyphs, and before I contacted him, I was filming the lights on the east side of South Mountain in 2004, in the summer of 2004, almost every night. I was getting some great formations out there, right on the east side of South Mountain at Ray Road. There's a power plant on Ray Road. And these lights were hanging right over that power plant. I was at Mesa Community College. I was up on the stage bleachers, high up in the sky, watching these lights almost every night in the summer of 2004. I finally ended up making the news. I did the news about 3 or 4 times, and the end result was we were all seeing flares in Tucson 150 miles away, and that's just impossible. These lights were right there at South Mountain. They were right here in the city. They were not 150 miles away, and I think we all know what flares look like. Anyway, these were not flares. So, they even got the military involved, dropping flares out of A-10s. I mean, it was just crazy. Those of you who've been following me all these years know what's going on, know the garbage that I've been putting up with. And so during my, archaeology bit and studying UFOs and things like that, it seemed like mountains, right? Mountains were the source. Like every time, there was like a major sighting in history, there was always a mountain. There's always a mountain there. And that's what brought me to that mountain is because, in 2004, I was on my quest. I was on a hunt to find the Phoenix Lights, and they helped me out. I was on the east side, and they appeared in front of me about 2 or 3 miles away from me, and they were going west. They were heading towards South Mountain, and then they disappeared. And 2 more would appear in front of me, and where were they going? They were going towards South Mountain. So I followed them. I followed these lights to Mesa Community College until we ran into the news and the military saying we're seeing flares, and that's when it dawned on me, wait a minute, in 2005, let's move to the mountain. Let's go to South Mountain and see what we can do, see what we can find. And also, I can hike the mountain. I can find out more of these petroglyphs. So in 2005, that's what I did. I found an awesome place on the east side of South Mountain, about a mile away, on Baseline. And what's the Baseline? Southern, somewhere like that. I don't know, but it wasn't too far away. And I could see the mountain clearly. And it didn't take very long. I see something come out of the sky and seem to land on South Mountain. And then about an hour or 2 later, a few miles down the road, down from the mountain, I see 2 of them leave the mountain. 2 of these things leave the mountain. So I go out there, right? I go out there because I'm still thinking spaceships, right? I'm thinking technology. I'm thinking crafts. I'm thinking little gray men from Alpha Centauri, right? Because that's what we're all made to believe. So I'm out there and I'm looking for some kind of evidence of a spaceship. I'm looking for a crop circle. I'm looking for something because I filmed it. I saw it. I know I'm exactly at the spot where that thing went down at. And what do I find? I find a huge boulder with a stick-figure man looking up at the exact same thing that I filmed the day before, and spirals. Carvings of spirals are there. And the more and more as weeks and months go by, the more and more I'm filming these things, and I'm going out there, and I'm seeing the petroglyphs, and I'm hiking South Mountain. I'm starting to think, you know what, I need to call up Dave. I saw that guy on Channel 8. I need to call him up and see what's going on. That's when I got a hold of Dave Morris, and I said, hey, I saw you last year. I saw you on Channel 8 talking about the petroglyphs. I didn't tell him exactly what I was doing. I told him that I was interested in the petroglyphs, and then I was doing a documentary on the petroglyphs, and if he could teach me, the true interpretations of these glyphs. And so we agreed, and we went up there on South Mountain, and we spent a couple hours up there. And he was talking about the spirals. He was talking about the lizard people. He was talking about the giants. And one of the things that I really found fascinating, especially when it came to the giants, is he looked east, and he pointed towards the Superstition Mountain. And he's like, you see that mountain over there? And I go, yeah. He's like, that mountain has a history all its own that few people know about. He says.
Which mountain was he pointing to?
The Superstition.
Was it the Flatiron or Weaver's Needle, or was it more south towards Santan, or was it just straight east?
The whole mountain, the whole Superstition Mountain.
Okay, so like Flatiron?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And he goes, when the Holocauns were here, when he goes, well, when ancient times, when the ancient people were here, he says that they were bloodthirsty giants roaming land. And there was a flood that was coming to wipe them all out. And the lead giant didn't want his people to drown, so he told his people to stand up on this huge boulder. And when the people did that, he used his powers to raise this rock up, but the water kept coming. And he used his powers again to raise this rock up, but the water kept coming. He used his powers so much that by now it is as tall as a huge mountain, but the water is still coming. And so at his last bit of strength, because he didn't want his people to drown, he immortalized them by turning them all to stone. And when he did that, that's when the water had stopped. And today, when you look upon the Superstition Mountains, you can still see that water ridge, that water line where the flood had stopped. And if you look a little higher on top of the mountain, you can still see those giants turn to stone still on the Superstition Mountain. You can still see the huge formations of people, giant people up there on the mountains. Even when you're like 2 miles away from the Superstition Mountains, you can still look up and see those people still up there turning to stone. As a matter of fact, there's a giant on Camelback Mountain. People like to call that Mummy Rock, but it's actually a giant turned to stone. And then
So you're saying that the praying monk on Camelback Mountain's actually a giant?
Right, yeah. That's a giant turned to stone. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And see, that's interesting too, because I mean, there's a lot of, look at Bryce Canyon in Utah. That whole place is supposed to be, those are all giants. So this isn't anything new. This story isn't anything new. It's been told all over the world of how these giants are here, and not only did the flood wipe them out, but they got turned to stone also, and they're still there, right?
Okay.
So he's telling me about all this stuff, and especially the spirals. We went into the spirals, and he says that the spirals is a symbol for like looking into a tunnel, into a vortex. You're looking down into a tunnel. He says when the spiral goes clockwise, it's a doorway in. When the spiral goes counterclockwise, it's a doorway out. Now, most of these spirals that we find up there are oriented towards a crack in the stone, or they are oriented down towards the ground, or they are oriented up into the sky. He says that crack is the emergence point for the spirits. Does he say spaceships? No. Does he say technology? No. Say little green guys? No. He's talking about spirits, right? He says they're going down into the underworld. He says when the spiral ends up, it's a vortex in the sky. That's when those lights, they just seem to appear in the sky coming out of nowhere. They're coming through the door. They're coming through the vortex. And if they're right over a mountain, there's going to be a spiral, right oriented, right perfect aligned with that doorway in the sky. And they're coming in through another dimension.
So you're saying they were marking where the spirals were markings of where the doorways would open up?
Absolutely. This is how we can learn from history. This is how we can understand what's going on in our future, is because we have to understand what happened in our past. And the lucky thing about it is the Indians have already done it for us, man. They've documented all this stuff for us. They tell you they tell us when it's gonna happen, when they're gonna be here, what months, what seasons are gonna be here. They tell you what to look for. Is it diamond? An orb? Is it a flying snake? Is it a crooked snake? Is it lights in the sky? They tell you on the places where they come and go from. All you have to do is use your third eye and understand this. Have an open mind, okay? Because what if, because I mean, as they've been telling us this whole time, right, that the spirits live on the mountains, what if they're talking about what we see in the skies today, aka UFOs? What if these spirits are actually UFOs, right? And it's fascinating because you know what? The more and more I sat there, I watched that mountain for 3.5 years. Okay, I'm up on my second story building apartment window with my camera and a tripod, and I watched that mountain for 3 years. And I saw some incredible stuff. And I soon realized, because by now, they're like coming right at me. I mean, those of you who've seen my videos, they're coming right at my window. They're flying out of the sky. They're leaving from the mountain. They're coming right at me. They know I'm there. They know I'm filming them. They know I'm on the mountain. They know I'm watching them. And it just got crazy for that 3 years. And I started to realize, wait a minute, these things are shape-shifting. Okay, Native Americans always told us they're shapeshifters, changing colors, they're changing shape. And I soon realized that this is not technology that we're dealing with here. Because one day, this is for an instance, one morning I'm watching the mountain and I'm watching this canyon, okay? And this canyon goes all the way down to Baseline Road there. It's a huge canyon, and this canyon has tons of spirals on it. So it's telling people that the whole canyon is a doorway, is an emergence point to the underworld, to the underworld. And I saw this huge flying serpent, come out of that canyon on the top. This is interesting too, because on the top of that canyon is a petroglyph of two men looking up at a flying snake. This just so happens this flying serpent came out of that crack. Quetzalcoatl is alive and well and flying around in Phoenix, Arizona. I have seen him. I have filmed him many, many times. He's real. He's here. That is what's going on here. That thing climbed in the sky for about 1,000 feet up. Then he turned and started coming in my direction. I documented all this. I have all this on film. It was an apartment complex. I'm out in the parking lot filming this thing right above me. Until two airplanes come around. Two white Cessna airplanes. They're watching. Yes. White Cessnas and black helicopters are hanging around South Mountain. I filmed them. I've documented them. I've seen them. These airplanes scare them away. And that's what was going on in 2004. When I'm watching these lights over the power plant on Ray Road on the east side of South Mountain, I noticed that two little white Cessna airplanes were circling real high above that power plant, at least 1,000 or 2 feet up. Okay, they're circling that power plant. Okay, and when these lights appeared over that power plant, or they moved slowly to that power plant, these airplanes would zoom in after them. Okay, and at first I'm thinking, oh my God, someone is watching this stuff too. Someone's trying to investigate them also. But the more and more that I saw what was going on, I soon realized that they're not there to investigate them. They're there to get them out of the area. And that's exactly what was going on. These lights would appear above that power plant. These airplanes would zoom in after them. And when the airplanes got within a mile radius or two of these lights would disappear. These airplanes would come in and circle right above that power plant. Airplanes would leave, lights would come right back. It was a cat and mouse game the whole summer of 2004. That's when I realized that somebody else was watching what was going on too. I wasn't the only one here. I wasn't the only one with my camera and my tripod up there on the bleachers of Mesa Community College watching these things above the power plant. Somebody else was watching it also.
All right, can we take a time out just for a second? And you're saying that you have video of Quetzalcoatl flying out of the underworld?
Leaving South Mountain.
South Mountain. Sorry. And Quetzalcoatl is basically like a dragon, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, man. I mean, it was a black and red, huge snake. I mean, it was a dragon, man. It was a black and red serpent. Look at my YouTube channel. I talk about it. I show this many, many times.
I've seen the red orb footage. So we'll look up the video, and Kyle can get the video. It's at Phoenix Lights Petroglyphs in the Sky is the YouTube channel. All right. Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
Oh, wait, I have one quick question while we're taking is
There's
what do you
I
think the
have other shows
connection?
on channel too, so it's way at the. It's probably at the bottom. But if you search my name on the internet and search up flying serpent, you'll see it. But yeah, it's a huge black red serpent, and it made the news the next day. I took that to the news, and it made Channel 3. It was on Channel 3 News.
Wow, that's great.
And oh yeah, and so I soon realized that this is spaceships and technology. That's all great. That's all fine and dandy. I have seen some things that could resemble a craft. I've seen a black triangle. I've seen jacks in the sky, 4 silver orbs connected together, going in clockwise. I mean, that could be a craft, couldn't it?
Sure.
But I think what the majority of the public is seeing is something completely different. This phenomenon, these things they're alive. Let's just say that. Let's just get it out in the open. These things are alive. They're highly intelligent. When you see 5 lights out there, you're not looking at a spaceship. You're not looking at a cloaked ship whatsoever. The light in itself is not a craft. It's not a spaceship. That is the spirit. That is the being itself. That is the creature. That is the living entity. There's 5 lights out there. There's 5 living entities. And how they're getting away with being in our skies without being detected so much is because they know. They watch. They know who's watching them and who's not. And they're secret. I mean, they come in so silently. They don't make any noise. They don't cast any shadows. You wouldn't even know that they're there unless you look up and you see them. But then, because of all this other, I don't want to say strong of a word, but all the stuff that people are looking for is spaceships and crafts and flying saucers. And so when they see that light up there, oh, it's a flare.
Okay.
Or if you see a color changing thing in the sky, oh, it's a balloon. It's got to be a balloon because I was brainwashed into thinking spaceships. That is not technology. That is something in the sky that's changing colors and it's changing shape. It seems to be in control of itself, but it's a balloon. Okay? I'm sorry. It's a balloon. I'm sorry, it is not a balloon, okay? That thing that you are witnessing up there that's in control, going against the wind, that's changing colors and changing shape, is the being, is the creature, okay? This is what we're dealing with here. This is what we're dealing with here. Spaceships and technology and green men coming down and helping the planet, I'm all for that. But there is something else here. And I think that is what we really need to pay attention to, because that is what everybody is seeing in the sky mostly, are these orbs, these red triangle-looking things and stuff like that. Now, flying serpents. I mean, look at Mexico. I mean, come on. They've been filming those flying serpents for at least 15 years now, maybe longer. I just started filming them in 2005. I was the first one to make this connection. And then when I proved that the petroglyphs were matching the exact same things I'm seeing in the sky, I mean, there was no question about this. That is where the credibility lies at. I mean, you see it in the sky, you record it, you filmed it, you witnessed it, and now you go onto the rocks, and you can see the petroglyphs of the exact same thing that you saw the day before. That's pretty incredible. That is mind-blowing.
So right now we're looking at the video from April 28th, 2005 at 6:49 a.m. Is that the video you're talking about?
I don't know. I have
I think
thousands
it's titled
of
like Devil in the Sky or something.
It's a red and black snake. I'm looking out my kitchen window.
Yeah, it says UAP flying serpent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Sure. Absolutely.
So do you remember about how far away it looked like it was? I mean, this looks like it's very far, probably a good 1.5 miles away from where you're at.
Yeah, so I'm at the mountain. I'm living there at the mountain. I'm about 1.5 miles away. Keep watching the video. It'll change. It'll come right over my windowsill there. And then the next shot, I'm out of the parking lot, and it's right above my head. That's not the first time. And you know, I'm dealing with a high 8 video camera, okay?
Right.
So we didn't have very good technology back then in 2005. So I was doing the best I could filming this with the camera that I had. But clearly, that thing's alive.
Sure looks like it's alive.
Right,
So-
and it's moving.
So, quick question: was there certain times it came out? Like, was like the 6 o'clock hour like a normal time, or was it like sporadic, or like there was no rhyme or reason to when they came out?
Okay, that's a great question. So, the first year I'm watching these things, I noticed that there was a pattern. That January, February, March, April, May, June, July, and August seem to be the hot times to watch these things. And then some months they were there, and some months they weren't. And it choreographed. It would align with the equinox and the solstice. And that's when I soon learned that that's what the holocoms were doing. They were tracking these things also. This is the reason why we have stone boulders out there with petroglyphs oriented towards the summer equinox, or excuse me, the winter equinox sunrise. And the petroglyphs, the sun will align right above that petroglyph. Or there's boulders out there that are cut and stacked and chiseled and placed on top of each other to create shadow effects of either a pyramid shadow cutting through the rock, going up the rock face and into the stone, or it's making a profile, an Indian profile face, a perfect face during the equinox and the solstice on South Mountain. I have found at least 5 of these equinox light and shadow effect markers. And in many cases, they tell you, look, it's, you know, either there's a flying snake next to that carving, or there's a flying diamond, there's an orb. So it's like many different kinds of things. We're dealing with many different types of entities here. I believe it's probably, you know, the same type of, I don't know, creature, if you will, but different shapes. So, for instance, on the east side of South Mountain, for about a mile or two, you'll see these petroglyphs of orbs. And then the landscape will change. It's really cool. South Mountain, the landscape changes. And when it does, so does the rock art. Now we're dealing with flying diamonds. Okay, now maybe a few blocks down or a few miles down from South Mountain, on the mountain, now we're looking at flying serpents. Okay, and then a few blocks down from the mountain, now we're looking at flying lights. There's lights in the sky. There's people of lights, right? So each different canyon, each different parts of the mountain are different types of entities. We have the serpent, we have the orbs, we have the diamonds, we have the crooked snakes, we have the flying swastika, we have all these crazy symbols on the South Mountain that are talking about the prehistoric photographs of what was seen in the sky. This is the reason why we see these petroglyphs when they're carved high up in the sky, or they're carved high up on the rock face. The artist wants you to look up, because when you look at these petroglyphs, you have to include the whole landscape in with the art. You just don't look at the art from, you know, and that's just it. You have to include the landscape, because the artist is telling you this is what happened here. This is a photographic testimony of what occurred here. So I'm telling you, I want you to know that I saw something in the sky. So what am I going to do to make you look up? I'm going to carve this thing on a rock face cliff high up in the sky, because I want you to look up. And when you look up, you will see a big flying cross or a serpent or an orb right up on top there. And there's a spiral next to it, right? Going into the doorway. So that first they came on these months and they were gone on these months. The next year, it repeated itself. The next repeated itself, man. That was it. I discovered the pattern on when to see these things in the sky, when they were going to be on, when they're going to be here. And yes, if you look at the time and date stamp on some of my earlier research, it tells you, man, 5:30 was a great time. 7:30 in the morning was a great time. 6 o'clock in the morning, that's a great time, because it was like a pattern, right? And see, the government, whoever knows, knew this also. And so when I was out there,
when was the last time you saw one?
You know, I moved, so I'm not there anymore. So it's been a while. That's why I haven't posted anything, right? You haven't seen any new UFOs from me. Why? Because I'm not seeing anything. And I don't fake my stuff, okay? And every time I made the news, I had my videos analyzed, way before.
Oh, shoot. Looks like it's flying at you.
Right, yeah. And they verified the rock drawings. They verified the rock art. So, I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. Everything was verified. Everything was deemed correct. And that's what made everything scary, right? That's what made everything, turn the page on the chapter of the Phoenix Lights. Because now it went a step further. And, it was all fine and dandy in 2004 when I'm filming the lights and we don't know what it is. But now in 2005, I'm doing my history. And I'm coming to find out that, wait a minute, these things are alive. They could have the possibility of what happened to the Hohokam Indians. It's getting into a huge, deep story here. The more and more I uncovered facts, the more and more I ran into a conspiracy. And that's what that's what happened here. So that first year, I'm out there on South Mountain. All right. I spent many, many years, many times, many days, many nights on South Mountain. I mean, my knees are a written testimony. I have bad knees because that damn mountain. There were days I was crawling. I'm on my hands and knees crawling away from that mountain. It just beat me up, man. I'm telling you. I've been from one point of that mountain to the other point of that mountain. I had seen it all. I had discovered so much stuff there that the archaeologist is not talking about. And that's what really upsetted me. Because I'm like, dude, there's a tomb there, right? Dude, there's an altar right there. I mean, what is going on here? They want you to stay on the trails. Why? Because when you go off the trails, that's when you start to discover things, That's where everything is. That's where the truth lies. That's where the cover up is hiding. When you go off these trails. And the whole year, I'm making the news. I did the pilot for the UFO Hunter show, and I did the pilot for the Ancient Aliens TV series. In 2007, I went on to do the UFO Hunter show on the History Channel, and I did a few other cable shows. But I'm telling them, look, this is different. Spaceships and green guys, gray guys, whatever, that's all fine and dandy, but this is something different here. And they wouldn't let me talk about that. They said, Jeff, if you're going to talk about these things, you must say crafts. You must say UFOs. Because the public is not ready for this yet. And this is in 2007. And I'm like, dude, the public better get ready for this because that's what's here. Just because I'm the only one that discovered this doesn't make it not true, all right? They even said that it was my theory on the petroglyphs. Oh, my God, dude, come on now. It's not my theory. Where did I get this information from? From the Native Americans, right? Okay, so a whole year, I'm up there. I'm doing shows. I'm doing news radio, news interviews. I'm doing radio shows. I'm doing all this stuff. But yet, I can't get the archaeologist to agree with me. I even got the archaeologist out of his shell, and I did a news report with him. And he's trying to tell people a bunch of BS, saying, oh, it's just a lizard on a rock. Oh, my God, dude, come on now. I don't think anyone has ever got a city archaeologist to actually get on the news in their city and talk about UFOs connected to the rock art. No one's ever done that before. And so I was really frustrated. And so there's a lot of petroglyphs. Earlier I talked about the giant wall that's been blown up. And I went after that. I was like, why are they blowing up petroglyphs? And so I soon realized that it was a CCC, part of the New Deal, by President Roosevelt during the Depression. And so, studying Roosevelt, studying Eleanor and everything like that, the president's wife, the president's wife, because he was in polio, he couldn't get around. So the wife went out on the West Coast, all over the United States, mostly on the West, and was investigating, some of the folklore, some of the Native American folklore, some of the petroglyphs, some of the history here. And it's my opinion, there's no facts on this, but this is just what I come to understand through investigating all this crazy stuff is that they didn't want the public to know about the demonic creatures on South Mountain. They didn't want people to know about the gold that's buried on South Mountain. They didn't want the people to know about, what actually happened to the Hohokam Indians. So the part of the New Deal is they hired 200 young men to live on South Mountain for 3 years, and they made picnic tables. They did mining. There was a lot of mines up there. They pulled about $60,000 worth of gold and silver out of South Mountain. They also destroyed petroglyphs. And why did they do that? Right? It's because they wanted to make it a family-oriented park. And I guess they figured that, family having a picnic next to a rock showing demonic creatures and sacrifice isn't very family oriented. So instead of just, moving the rock, they just blew them up. They blew up all this evidence. And that's what we ran into. There's a lot of boulders with petroglyphs that have been devastated. But the higher you go up on the mountain, the more of the story is left because, the CCC didn't get that high and they didn't figure anybody was going to go that high, but I did. And I found all this stuff, right? And so I was upset. And so I wanted to go investigate the CCC. I'm like, dude, why are you out here blowing this stuff up? What is going on here? So the next step is the next journey, the next investigation was to go to the Phoenix Library. What does the Phoenix Library, the Arizona Burton Barr Library, have to say about South Mountain and all the stuff? So I went up on the 4th floor. I went up to the Arizona room. It's like a type of government room. I had to present my ID. And I asked for a folder. I said, just give me everything you have on South Mountain. The lady comes back with a huge folder, and I open it up, and boom, what hits me in the face? Oh my God, the first park ranger of South Mountain, Charles Holbrook. He was the first ranger from early 1930s up until the late 1940s. And he used to do tours on South Mountain. I used to do tours also, talking about the petroglyphs.
Right.
He did that also. And the Native Americans at that time trusted Charles, and they told Charles about the tombs up there, told Charles what actually happened on South Mountain, how sacred of a mountain, how holy of a mountain this is, and what comes and goes, what visits that mountain for many thousands of years, and still going on today. They told him everything. And so Charles Holbrook went up there and he found the tombs. And he wrote this book. He wrote this journal. And in one flyer that he used to hand out to people, he called this valley the Lost City of Cibola, the Lost City of Gold. He believed that this was part of the seven that the Mayans had. The city of gold, in which the Spanish conquistadors were looking for. Remember, they came across looking for the 7 cities of gold.
Right.
Well, Phoenix, Arizona was part of the area that they investigated. Now, the archaeologist doesn't want to even admit that they came this far, but yes, they did. There's other evidence that they did travel this far. As a matter of fact, there's a petroglyph on the east side of South Mountain for Marcus Denazia, and it's inscripted from the 1800s. And a lot more, and he was a Spanish conquistador, and so Charles Holbrook actually had that petroglyph encased in bars. To this day, there's bars overlapping that petroglyph so nobody can ruin it. In the early days, they called that petroglyph the birthmark of Arizona, the birthmark of Phoenix, because it had the Spanish conquistador's birth date on there. Not birth date, but date of the arrival and his name. And so, anyway, I'm looking at all this stuff, and in this story, there's a website. I have a website on my YouTube channel. There's a link to my website, and there's a link there that says Charles Holbrook. That's real photocopies of his information, and when he talks about the lost city of Cibola. And he talks about how the Mayans are here. He talks about how the Hohokams are here. He talks about how the gold was here.
Sorry about that.
He says that tribal people, tribes from all over the nations came to Phoenix, Arizona, and they watched this mountain for hunting and sacrifice and for trade and worship. And he says a handful of gold for a handful of corn. And he talks about how the tombs are up there. And his son, after when Holbrook died, his son wrote a book about his dad, and that goes into greater detail on how his dad used to chase people away from these tombs that are on South Mountain. Lots of information. This is all covered up. This is all buried in the Phoenix Library for 80 years. No one has looked at this for 80 years, at least the public anyway, has seen this in over 80 years since his death. And because why? Because it talks about how the Mayans were here. It talks about the gold and the tombs that are buried on South Mountain. It talks about the giants, how the giants were here. It talks about the Phoenix Lights. It talks about these spirits of the earth and sky. It's all there. It's been there for 80 years, right? I was like, oh my God, dude. So like for this whole year, I'm verifying all this stuff, but I have nothing to back me up. How come nobody else is backing me up? Well, Charles Holbrook from the grave is backing me up now. Because he was clearly on my side, man, when I'm doing all this crazy stuff. And it was just a godsend. And I was like, oh my God, dude, that's it. So I photocopied all the information I could. And I was just ecstatic, I was like, dude, that's it. I knew I was right, and here's my proof. Here's my proof that the Hohokams, they didn't leave because of droughts. They left because they got taken away by the Phoenix Lights. They got taken away by the flying serpents. They got taken away by the orbs. That's what's going on here. That's the major conspiracy that's going on here in Phoenix. That's the major cover-up. Is that these things are real. These things have been visiting South Mountain for thousands of years, and it's a pattern. Once you understand this pattern, you can go out there and you can see them for yourself. That's what I've been trying to do for the last 20 years, is get people back on the mountain. I wrote a book. I took photographs. If you can't get to the mountain on your own, I bring the mountain to you with my book, man. I brought all this information down from the mountain, just as Moses brought the commandments down from the mountain. I'm bringing all this information, these sacred scrolls, and that's what they are. The mountains around Phoenix, they're sacred scrolls of history, of the real history of Phoenix, Arizona. And I tell you what, it doesn't paint a very good picture. And that's the reason why, in my opinion, the government will never come clean about these things, because if the government came out, the city of Phoenix came out and said, hey, you guys, guess what? There is a flying snake that leaves South Mountain all the time. And it's possible he's the one that took away the people who lived here before. Isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful? No, man. Come on. How many people would live in that valley if they actually knew the truth that the people that lived there before got taken away by these lights in the sky that we all see in the skies today?
Jeff.
It was their downfall.
Jeff, this is incredible. This is incredible stuff, man. I do want to ask you, have you seen the movie Nope?
I don't think so.
Oh, because Nope is about a UFO that turns out to be a living creature that is this basically not abducting people, but it's eating them. But it sounds a lot like what you're talking about. You might enjoy it. I don't know, but
wow, cool. Yeah, I've never heard of it, but I'll check it out. Sure.
But these videos that you've got on your YouTube are absolutely incredible. So these were taken back 2004, 2005. You've got video of humanoid, all different shapes of UFOs. And I guess the thing that I want to ask you is, are these UFOs different things? Are they all the same thing, just changing shape? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I was kind of talking about that earlier. It's like It's kind of weird. So, I mean, in the beginning of the South Mountain, we have the flying serpents, and then 3/4 of the mountain we see carvings of flying orbs, and then a mile down we see carvings of flying serpents, and then we see carvings of flying crosses, and then carvings of flying swastikas, and so it's like all these the creatures are coming in different doorways, I guess you will. Are there specific doorways? So, like I said before, the Indians have already done this for us. They've already tracked them. They were sky watchers. They tracked these things. They discovered when they were coming, when they were going. They discovered where they're coming from, and they documented it all. They put spirals marking the emergence point. And they documented what is going to come out of this doorway. Is it a flying serpent? Is it a flying orb? Is it a flying diamond? They've done all that homework for us. They've done everything for us. All we have to do is go out there and understand what they're talking about. And hopefully that my information, it'll bring a little bit better light on these petroglyphs, because it's not just some random story. No, it's part of our history. It's part of our history. It's where we come from. And I think we need to open up at least one tomb. Okay, I show a tomb on my website there, and you can clearly see that there's something there. And part of the folklore here is the Mayans, they buried the gold there because eventually they were going to return someday and uncover the gold, and everything's going to start over. So that's one of the rumors on maybe why they haven't uncovered this, because the Phoenix Lights are actually guarding. They're watching the gold. They're watching the precious items that are buried there on this holy mountain. We could probably even go into other stuff. It's not just gold that's there. It's possible special weapons, because there was a war that went on here with a different type of entity shooting up at a flying serpent. That's in my book too. And I show the petroglyphs where this four-armed six-figure man has this staff weapon, and he's shooting at a half-man, half-snake in the sky above his head. And they're also shooting at orbs in the sky. They have Indians. They're portraying the whole kind of Indians with bows and arrows, trying to shoot these orbs out of the sky. That's all carved on South Mountain. And so yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, to say the least, it is a little crazy.
Okay, so now let's go on and let's find out. So what makes South Mountain so special?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Why not some of these other mountains? They do come and go. There are spirals on the White Tank Mountains. There are spirals on everywhere the spirals are, there's an emergence point. That's one of the keys. But it was South Mountain back in the day that everybody came to watch these things. It was like a concert, man. Everybody came from all nations, from miles around to watch these things in the sky, man. But why South Mountain? So the natives, they say they're going down into the underworld. But on a scientific level, remember back in 2004, I said that these things are above the power plant on Ray Road?
Yeah.
That power plant is boiled down into the fault line. It's the fault line that these things are attracted to. It's the energy. They're going down into the underworld. They're going down into that fault line. They're absorbing that energy. When you see these lights and they're hanging over a mountain and they're bright and beautiful and glistening and shining and sparkling, man, they're sucking up that energy. It's the energy that draws these things there. And what's up with the pattern? Okay, so the sun changes during the seasons, right?
Right.
The sun changes in the sky. And when it does, it aligns with these fault lines on the earth. And when the sun aligns with the correct fault lines, it opens up this energy. It causes like a fusion effect, and it attracts these beings to that energy source. So the whole time the sun is in the position of that fault line, those creatures are there absorbing that energy. Now the sun is going to change because it's time to change seasons. The sun is somewhere else now on the earth, over another fault line. And so these things are following the sun. That's why we see like a whole bunch of UFOs like the first couple of months, and all of a sudden they're gone. We don't see him until maybe next year, right? Well, the sun's back again. The sun's over that fault line, and so are these UFOs. So are these creatures. They're over the fault line. They're absorbing that energy. It's interesting, too. So I've been saying this ever since 2007, 2006, 2005, when I first discovered this pattern. And so I've been saying this all along for years now, right? And so, who is it? Skywalker Ranch decided to prove that theory. They think, the UFOs are here for the energy, right? Or the UFOs are. They wanted to do a test to see if there was energy in the sky. Okay, so what they did is they built a bottle rocket. And they put sensors in the rocket, and they shot that rocket up for the sensors to take measurements and see if there's any energy up there. And lo and behold, what is up there? There's a light in the sky. There's a creature in the sky. And unfortunately, they still think that, maybe that craft was making the energy. They verified that there was energy up in the sky where that orb was at, but they think that it was the spaceship that was creating that energy. It's backwards, people. That light is there for the energy. Okay, and that was like season 1, episode 4. If you want to check it out. Okay. So yeah, man. And so they verify that it's energy, but they still think it's spaceships. They still think that it's making the energy, and that's what their sensors were picking up. But it's backwards. The energy's already there. The sun's in the right position. That's why the UFO is there to absorb the energy.
All right, Jeff, let me ask you a question about the lights that you observed on camera in 2005 through 2006. Were they different than the ones that emerged in 1997? Because the ones in 1997 were considerably larger, considerably brighter, considerably more visible than the ones that you recorded on the mountain.
Same stuff. Same things.
Same thing. Do you have an idea of why they were so much more visible in 97?
I think sometimes they do want. This is my personal opinion. I don't really know this for sure, but sometimes when they're here and nobody's seeing them, then they do a big spread. They want to be seen, right? And then it'll be on the news, and it's a big do-ha-ha. And then all of a sudden they're gone, right? Because everybody's looking for them, right? They're getting too much attention. So everybody's looking. This was the pattern. Every time I made the news, every time I was filming them on the mountain or filming them in the sky, either lights or day sightings, I made the news. I wouldn't see them for like maybe a week or two, right? They'd be gone. And then they would slowly start to come back. Is because it gained attention. They don't want too much attention, right? They're stealthy, they're sneaky, and so they don't want a lot of attention. They want people to know that they're here, that there's something here. But it's time yet, okay? It's not time. They're all like, dude, how come these things aren't landing on the White House lawn and saying that they're here? Well, because it's not time yet, all right? So nobody knows the exact time when everything is going to hit the fan. Not even these things, but they know that the prophecies are all in place. Everything has been going incorrectly of these prophecies. So they know that it's almost time. And what is the purpose? We have to look at the history of this. So when the Holocauns lived here, what did I say before? They didn't know how to live. So these things help these people how to live. In return, we treated these things as gods. If one came down, landed on the White House and lawn and said, worship me, we don't say, oh yeah, right, dude, I got to go to school, I got to go to work, I got bills to pay, I don't got time to worship you. But if there's no food, there's no water, there's a huge war that happened, 2/3 of the world is destroyed, there's no food, there's this radiation, but yet they see a light in the sky, and he comes down, and he shapeshifts into a man, just like what the petroglyphs are talking about. The petroglyphs are shapeshifting. They're shaping into a man. They're shaping into a serpent. They're shaping into a diamond. This guy comes down, and he shapeshifts, and he says, look what I can do. I can clean up the water. I can clean up the air. I can clean up your hunger. I am the one you've been waiting for all these years. Worship me. I am the one you've been waiting for. See where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
It's all biblical. It's crazy. So we can read Genesis 6 in the Bible, and then we can read it. We can read the text, and then we can go out on the mountain, and we can see the photographs. We can see the photographs of what the texts are talking about. The Genesis 6 says that the Nephilim came down and impregnated everybody and bore giants. Oh my God, that's what the petroglyphs are showing. The petroglyphs are showing this lady in a menstrual period, and it's attracting these things to her because she's bleeding, and there's giants around. Hello. Okay, all right, that is what was going on here. So this is another reason why the government is not going to talk about this stuff. It's because basically we're dealing with biblical stuff here. All right, and when you start saying, "Oh, dude, you're talking about the Bible, you're talking about church. Oh my God, don't do that to me." No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about this book and other sacred scrolls that explains what we see in the skies today. And that's where the credibility lies. Not hearsay that nobody can prove that a spaceship went over Phoenix 1997, March 13th. There's no evidence of that. The evidence lies on what we recorded that night and what the petroglyphs and history say. And that speaks a completely different story.
That is incredible. So while you've been talking, I know you probably haven't seen, but while you've been talking, we've been showing photos from your website, or from your Flickr account. We've been showing videos from your channel that show the entities flying overhead. And quite frankly, you've given us a lot to kind of digest with this. This is kind of a lot.
Yes, I think I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about stuff that hasn't been talked about in 1,000 years. You know, I mean, this stuff has been covered up. It's not talked about anymore. And when I was going into this, you know, investigating the Phoenix Lights, because I was born here in Phoenix. I've been seeing these things in the sky ever since I was a kid. That's the reason why I went off, you know, to find out what exactly was going on. In many ways, these things knew I was coming. There's so much evidence to suggest that they've been watching me since I was a kid. Now I'm up on the mountain. Now they're coming right at me. The petroglyphs have the power. Some of them has the power to invoke the spirits. You go out there and talk to them, and they will come and see you. I've done that a few times, and it's worked. And so it's like they knew I was coming. And I'm here to bring this information out from the grave, because, you know, Charles Holberg, the first park ranger, he was not bashful about all this. He told people about that, and that was probably one of the problems, because when he did tell people that there was gold on the mountain, people started to go back up there and start digging the gold up. And, you know, digging these teams up, you know. So that was a downfall of his. And that's one of the reasons why they're not telling us about this anymore, because they don't want people going up there and digging up these tombs. And why did they make South Mountain a government park? Why not make Superstitions a government park? Why not make A Mountain a government park? Why not make White Paint Mountains? Why pick on South Mountain? Because South Mountain is the key. South Mountain is the heart of these creatures, and there's so much history there that it's overwhelming to the public. And just like what the History Channel told me, the people are not ready for this, but they better, because this is our history. This is what's really here. This is the evidence, and the evidence says that there's tons of gold on South Mountain. There's altars. There's evidence of giants. The petroglyphs show that these things in the sky, some of them are not good. I do believe that there are good ones, though, so don't get me wrong. There's so many sacred scrolls where we read on how man is interacting with some of these creatures, and they're actually helping people out. I mean, look at Moses and the parting of the Red Sea, and what about Moses? I mean, he was up on a mountain, right? And this light, this Phoenix light, came down, took him up, he's gone. And who was it that brought the people into the promised land? It wasn't Aaron. It was that thing in the sky. Read the book, man. Read Exodus. Read the book of Numbers. It tells you that they followed the thing in the sky for 40 years and 40 days.
The pillar of fire,
Right.
pillar of fire by night, pillar of smoke during the day.
Absolutely. Come on now, and all this information has been clearly here. I mean, it's just there. We just need to understand it and not look at it as religion, but look at it as a history of the world. And when you do that, all your questions will be answered. It tells you what these things are. It tells you what's coming up next. It tells you the history of these beings. It tells you that they're not from Mars, that this is their planet also. They've always been here. Just as the oceanographers are finding new species of life below the ocean, this is a new species of life above the ocean that the scientists aren't talking about. They fail to recognize. Why? Because it's a scary thing. It's biblical, and it led to mankind's downfall back in the day. These people treated which of these things as gods, and what happened? They ended up being taken away. And it was just a big mess, and history is, pretty much going to repeat itself here, and so that's the biggest conspiracy of all time. That's why they're not going to tell you about these things. They're going to tell you, what do you understand? We understand technology. We understand spaceships. We understand metal crafts. We understand little guys. Okay. We don't understand supernatural creature beings that shapeshift and have the power to go inside rocks, to come up out of the ground, to come in and out of dimensions, right? Who has the power to shapeshift and to fly. I mean, we're not taught that. But
No.
We were taught technology, we were taught aliens, and there's so many people out there writing books on how they got abducted or how they have an alien in their closet. I mean, come on, it's all a money factor, dude. Look at what's going on here. It's all they're exploiting. That's exactly what's going on here with the Phoenix Lights. They're exploiting the lights here. They're not trying to figure out what's going on. And when you do, they shun you. They blackball you. That's exactly what happened to me, because I'm trying to say something completely different, and now because I am and I don't agree with everybody else, they're blackballing me. They don't want me on TV shows no more.
Wow.
I took my book to the news. In return, the news took my book to the city archaeologist, and they banned me. Okay, that's why I don't make any more TV appearances anymore. That's why I stopped making the news, right? Because my book came out, and it's got so much information, and it's got photographs. It's not my opinion. Look at the photographs, man. Look what I got down from the mountain. That's there. All right, you can't argue with history here. And so instead of arguing with me, they shut me up. They shut me down. And ancient aliens, they wanted to do something to me that I didn't really appreciate. They wanted to mislead the people. And I'm like, dude, I can't be a part of that. And so that's why I didn't do the Ancient Aliens TV show, because I didn't believe in their BS. And, so that's not what's here. And they really need to look at the evidence here. And unfortunately, the public, I say the public isn't ready for it, but I think the public is. I think it's been plenty of years now, and I think this conspiracy of BS of spaceships and Alpha Centauri and spaceships and crafts, I think the hearsay really needs to go out the door and let the facts speak. Let's look at what we can prove now. We can't prove anything going over Phoenix. We can prove that there was lights on the west side. We can prove that the lights have been there for thousands of years. We can prove that they're not a craft at all, but they're a living creature. That's where the continuity lies. It's interesting too. So let me talk about this one other petroglyph real quick. There's a lot of petroglyphs out there, and a lot of people look at this and they call it a lizard man. Okay, so it's a stick-figured guy, and he's got a tail. That's why they call him a lizard man. And in his stomach, he's got this circular. It's a circular stomach. It's a circular stomach. Now, some interpretations on that is he's halfway in the underworld and halfway in the our world. But watching these things and studying these things, I believe that orb is what we see in his belly, is what we see in the skies today. And what it's doing, it's morphing. It's morphing into what looks like a man. It's mimicking a man. It's mimicking a snake. It's mimicking a sheep. It's mimicking animals. And that's what these things do. They mimic the creatures on Earth. I've seen these things morph into what looks like a lamb. There's a lamb in the sky, and he's changing shape, and he's got different colors. And Scott Davis from Channel 3 called it a balloon. And I'm like, dude, are you ignorant? Balloons don't act that way. Come on now. But yeah, that's, what we're dealing with here. And it was crazy. So on my website, I call this one sighting Quetzalcoatl. And my wife and I was out on South Mountain, and we saw this light in the sky, okay? And I started filming it. And out comes this light. From the light is this black object comes out of this light. And my wife's got binoculars, and she's like, oh, my God, it's a snake. A snake just came out of that light. It's a snake. It's a snake. And I'm filming this thing, and I'm doing the best I can because I'm zoomed in all the way. And this thing it was a serpent. And it seemed to crawl across the sky, and then it shapeshifts. It turns into a six-figure man, and it looks like he's got an antenna on his head and his hands on his waist, and he goes over the mountain. It's on my website. Check it out. And it was incredible, and my wife's freaking out. She's never seen anything like that before. It's a snake, it's a snake, it's a serpent in the sky, it's a snake. I was like, oh, my God, no, dude. That's what we're here to see. We're here to see that stuff, and there it is, And oh my God, there's so many times, been up on the mountain and we see one and it's just, it's a miracle, dude. It really makes you think. It's like, oh my God, because you're coming face to face with this thing. And obviously, that one video of that red orb, you saw it. It went right over my window sill.
Yeah.
Okay? It left South Mountain. It came right at me. That's not the first time they've done that. They were coming at me. They were flying past me. It was so crazy. I'd be filming one orb, and another orb would fly into the camera and say, look at me, you're not looking at me, look at me. And I'd have to go look at him for a little while, you know what I mean? So it was really crazy stuff, man. And that's when I just came to the conclusion that this is deep. This is heavy stuff. And we need to talk about this, okay? We need to take a look at these petroglyphs. And we need to get out there on the mountain because South Mountain is the source. And I tell people, if you're going to go UFO hunting, first find out the history of where you live at. Find out about the Native Americans' history. If the Native Americans talk about a sacred mountain with petroglyphs and spirals and what the archaeologist likes to call anthropomorphs, shape-shifting looking things, that's a holy mountain. That's a sacred mountain. You need to watch that mountain for at least a year. Don't give up. Always go out there and don't have a phone with you. Don't have a camera phone. Use a video camera with a good zoom lens because these camera phones just aren't very good. You really want to use a video camera. And always show how the object leaves the sky. Don't splice and cut and only show the good parts. Because there's so many hoaxes out there. There's so many fake videos out there. We must see the raw video. And that's what I do when I analyze videos. When people send me videos to look at, they're cut, they're sliced, and they're not telling me how the object leaves. I don't know if that's a planet. I don't know if that's a star. You didn't show the object leaving the sky. It's inconclusive. So always film how the object leaves the sky and leave it raw, man. Let's see the raw stuff.
That is intense. Oh my gosh. I think Kyle and I are going to have to take a hike on South Mountain in the spring.
Oh, guaranteed.
I maps on where to go. I can show you where the tombs are. I can show you where to watch for these things. So yeah.
Oh, maybe you ought to come with us.
That'd be great.
Let's do it. Well,
yeah, we can make that a plan. That was my next thing. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, when we get things that are challenging us, we're challenging ourselves to go and investigate and see what's out there. And you have really challenged us tonight, Jeff. We're just about out of time. We do appreciate you taking this time. We hope to have you back, and hopefully we can go do that hike on South Mountain in the spring, and maybe have you in between again on the show to talk some more about what you found.
I think we just got the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot more here than what we've discussed. But
there is. There's 20 years of research into an hour and a half of talking, so there's so much. But yeah, it's great being on your show and great getting the word out. And yeah, man, if you ever see anything, film it and let me see it. I'd love to see it. Find me on Facebook, Jeff Woolwine, WOOLWINE. Find me on the internet. Type in my name search me on the internet. I'm all over the place. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. The hardcover book and softcover book, that's about to become extinct. So make sure you get your copies quick. The ebooks will last forever. But these hardcover books and the softcover books, they are running out, so you might want to get your copy fast before they're gone. That is a long story, and I will be talking about that in my next show on my Facebook and YouTube channel.
All right. So anybody looking for Jeff's YouTube channel, it's called The Phoenix Lights, Petroglyphs in the Sky. And Jeff has lots of video footage there that is worth taking a look. We only got, we just scratched the surface of what he's got on his channel. I've already subscribed because I know there's going to be a lot more stuff there. So check it out. If anybody has any questions or comments about what work Jeff has done, check him out on Facebook, check him out on YouTube, and I'm sure he's willing to show you what he's got. Now, for everyone else, make sure that if your interest was at all piqued by Jeff's topics tonight, subscribe to his channel. If you liked our content, make sure you like and comment and subscribe and discuss all of this. Thank you to everyone in the live chat. We appreciate all your comments and all your participation. And we look forward to having you back, Jeff. This really is really great stuff. So until next time, Kyle, do you have anything else to add?
No, that was awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And for the Thresholds of Reality, keep on exploring the edges of the unknown.